Okay, this video will be going over the work offsets and the XY directions. I'll basically be covering 4 different types of origin pickups. We're going to go through a center of a hole. We're going to go through an edge of a block that would be finished. And then we're going to pick up off a rough stock, working off the center of the part, but also working off the edge, but offsetting the rough stock. And we'll go through that in a little bit. First one we'll do would be the center of a part. Maybe we have a part that we already have and we have some more modifying to do. We have to drill some more holes and we want to pick up on the edge of this part. The first thing you want to start with, obviously, is a square vise. Just like you have on the manual mills, you want to make sure you indicate your hard jaw in, make sure it's square to the machine. I've already done that, so we're going to skip that part today. So I'm going to mount my part in the machine, make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to use a drill chuck. You can use a collet, precision chuck, Jacob's chuck, but we're going to use the drill chuck. We're just going to mount our indicator in there. Just hand tight, is tight enough. And then we'll go into the machine, get into hand jog. We're going to move our machine into position. And I'm not going to do this just for the sake of the video. There, once you get it in there, you're going to want to rotate your quill around until the dial reads 0 and it does not move. So once you have it into position and you have the center of that hole located, you want to go into your offset page for your work offset. Now in your program that you have written or you're going to be written, you have to know what work offset number you're going to use. For the most part, we use G54. It's the most common one to use. So once we have the work offset page highlighted, you have the G54 and you have the X highlighted. You can rotate around using the arrow keys on which axis you want. So we're in the X axis and all you need to do is hit part 0 set. So that just set our X axis. Now we're going to do the same thing for the Y. It automatically bounced over to the Y axis. We're still under G54. And now we're going to hit part 0 set again. So that would set your XY coordinate for the center of a part with the indicator where it is. So we're going to go ahead now. We're going to change up. We're going to do an edge find on a block that's already has finished sides. So you mount your part in there. You can still use the same Jacob's chuck. And now we're going to use an edge finder. Here too, just hand tight is good enough. If you over tighten them, you end up breaking the edge finders. Okay, so now we have to get our spindle rotating for this. If you had just turned on the machine, you probably can't just hit clockwise. It will not go. It needs an RPM in there. So the way you can do that is you go to MDI, type in a spindle speed, S800 for RPMs, M03, and you can input that on your screen. And then once you have that, if you hit cycle start, it's going to tell you the door is open. So you do have to close the doors. And now we can hit cycle start. And our spindle turns on. Now in setup mode, you can open the doors and the spindle will maintain the 700 RPMs. Use extreme caution, safety-wise. You got a rotating spindle in there. You don't want to be doing anything that's unsafe. So you keep your hands away from the spindle. But from here, we can go into hand jog and we can move our edge finder into position. Careful not to bring it down on top of the part. Okay, so we're ready to do our X edge find. In hand jog, you want to be in the 1,000 increment, and then you go into the part until the edge finder kicks over. So there. So now our edge finder is just on the edge of the part, just like you have in all the manual machines. Once again, you're going to go to your offset page that displays your work offsets. Now I'm just going to zero out our offsets from the previous part. So now we have our edge finder on our edge in the X direction. So here again, you want to be under G54 if that's what you have in your program. We're going to highlight the X. So now, once again, you're going to hit part 0 set. So what that did is that set the center of our quill 100 thousandths off the edge of our part because of the 200 thousandths edge finder. Remember, you have to offset that 100 thousandths. It's always best to do that right away. There's two ways you can do it. You can lift your quill up and you can move your edge finder over 100 thousandths. Best way to do that is to go into 100 thousandths increment and just give it one click. Now you have to make sure you move in the right direction. So once you do that, you can hit part 0 set again. The other way you can do it, in the preferable way, I'm going to move back over. So that's right where the edge of our edge finder hit the part. You hit your part 0 set. And now you have to mathematically input the 100 thousandths. Remember, this number, the negative 12.862, is off of machine home, which is up in this corner. So you got to think which way you want to move the quill. Do you want to move that quill closer to 0 or farther away from 0? In this case, we want to move it closer to 0, so we want to add 100 thousandths. So you have to make sure your axis is highlighted. And we're going to type in 0.1. And remember, this right enter button, that does the math for you. F1 would actually input 0.1. But in this case, we want the machine to do the math for us. We want to add 100 thousandths. So that just changed that to a negative 0.7620. Okay? If our edge was on this side, if our 0 is on this side of the part, we'd move our quill over until the edge finder hit. Once your edge finder hit, you do the same thing. You're going to hit part 0 set. Okay? Don't forget that this automatically jumps over, so you have to use your arrow keys to highlight the X. But now this time we want that quill to move away from machine home 0. So we want to go farther away from 0. In that case, then, we have to subtract 100 thousandths. And you hit right enter, and it does the math for you. The process is the same way for the Y direction. Bring your edge finder up. Sometimes it is helpful to hit it and get it out of center. Okay, so right there's our edge. So you go back into your offset page. If you're not on the work offset, you can just hit the offset button again, and it'll bring you right to it. Make sure you got G54 highlighted. And we're going to go to the Y axis. You hit part 0 set. Okay? So now we have to offset for the 100 thousandths for the edge finder. Machine home is up here. In this case, we want to go farther away from it, so we have to subtract 100 thousandths. Make sure our Y is highlighted. Minus 0.1, so we want to go farther away and do the right enter. Okay? If our 0 is on this side of the part, which generally you don't want to do, because remember, you always want your Y0 along your hard jaw. But let's just say for some reason it is on this side of the part. We'll work our edge finder up to it. Once it hits that out of center, you hit part 0 set. And now this time we want to go closer to 0, so we're going to want to add the 100 thousandths. So you go 0.1, right enter. Okay. So that's how you find your edge off a finished part. Now we're going to work with some rough stock. Let's change the part out here quick. So we got our rough stock mounted in our vise. First one we'll do is we'll work towards we'll pretend that the center of the part is our XY0. So you want to make sure you can offset your X and Y properly, so when you machine around the whole part, you're taking stock off and you have a finished, nice, clean part at the end. I'm just going to go and zero out my offsets here. Now that I got part in there and ready to go, I'm going to do an edge find. So turn my spindle back on, 1,000 increment. I'm going to come over there until my edge. Okay, right there it is. So So that's the edge on the left side. Now my program, I'm going to use G54. Remember, if you're using G54, it does not matter what's in all the other work offsets. There's 100 some work offsets in there. It does not matter what's in there. You can either write this number down off your machine home, but I actually just like putting it in right in the machine. That's why it's in there. I don't have to worry about copying it wrong. So I'm just going to hit part 0 set under G55. Okay. Now I'm going to hop over to the other side. I'm going to raise my edge finder up, come to the other side, drop it back down, 1,000 increment. So that's my edge on the right side. Go back to my offset page. I'm going to go under G56 this time. Okay? I'm going to hit part 0 set. Okay? Now, I have, according to machine home, where this edge is and this edge is. So I go into my G55 and 56. Basically what I'm doing is just looking for the number that's in the exact middle of that. So I'm just taking a calculator, going 12.694 minus 9.39. Divide that value by 2 and just add it to the one of those number, or the smaller number, so 9.39. So the exact middle is negative 11.042. So I'm going to go up G54 under my x-axis and type in negative 11.042. And now in this case, we want to hit F1 because we want to input that value that we typed. So you want to actually look at this number, just make sure it makes sense to you. Is that number in the middle of those two numbers that I have written down? And it is. So that's the center of our x. Now we're going to do the same thing for the y. Bring it up. Move over to about the center. Kicked over. Here too. Go back to my offset page under G55. I'm going to hit part 0 set. Okay? Pick it up. Come to the other side. Find the edge for this side. Okay, there it is. Back to my offset page under G56. We're going to hit part 0 set. So now, take our calculator again, find the middle of those two those two numbers. So we have 5.49 minus 7.955. We're going to divide that by 2 and add it to that smaller number. So at negative 6.7225 is the exact center of that part. So I'm going to put negative 6.7225. And we're going to hit F1. Okay? So that's the center of that Y. When you're punching in these numbers, always make sure you have a negative. They're always going to be negative numbers because you're working off of machine home. You're never going to have a X or Y positive value here. So that's how you find the center of a rough stock part. Okay, so now we're going to find our XY0 off the corner of our rough stock, but we want to make sure that we have enough material all the way around to clean up the whole part. So for this part, our finished dimensions is 3 inches by 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my part and just get a rough, it doesn't have to be real accurate. So it measures 3.1 that way and 2.25 that way. So then what you want to do is you want to do a little math. I know my rough stock is 3.1, my finished stock is 3 inches. So you subtract that 2 and find the difference. In this case, it's 0.1. And you divide that by 2. That means I want to take approximately 50 thousandths off this side and 50 thousandths off that side. So when we do our edge pickup, if we come over here, if this here is our 0, We come over here with our edge finder. We want to do 100 thousandths for our edge finder and then 50 thousandths for our rough stock. In the Y direction, our rough stock is 2 1/4. So up here we're going to do our math. 2 1/4 minus 2 inches is our finish. That leaves us with a 1/4 inch. Divide that by 2. That gives us about 1/8 of an inch. So we come up here and do our edge fine. We're going to come up here, do 100 thousandths for our edge fine, and then we're going to do 1/8 inch for our rough stock. And that'll put our XY0 basically inside of our rough stock. Okay? So we'll just go through that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and just zero out all of our offsets from the previous part. Okay, so now we have our rough stock mounted in our vise, and we're ready to pick up our edges for the X and Y in the rough stock in the upper left-hand corner. So I'll get my position, quill or edge finder in position. And we're going to turn on our spindle and bring our edge finder up to the edge of our part. Okay, so there it goes. Okay, so we have our edge on the edge of our edge finder on the edge of our part. We're going to hit the offset button so we make sure our work offset page is up. We're working with G54 and we're working with the X-axis. So once we have that all set, you hit part 0 set. Make sure you go back to the X because now we have to do our edge finder. And here too, because our machine home is in the upper right-hand corner of the table, we want to get closer to machine home, so we want to add these numbers. So we're going to add 0.1 for our edge finder, right enter, okay? But now we also have to do for our rough stock. And if you remember from a little bit earlier, we need to do 50 thousandths. And here too, we want to move that closer to machine home, so we're going to go 0.05, and it moves that 50 thousandths inside our X0, 50 thousandths inside our rough stock. So now when we machine around the whole part, it'll take 50 thousandths off here and 50 thousandths off there. So now we're going to do the Y-axis. Move our edge finder into position. Bring it down. So now we're edge finder's right on the edge of our part. We're on the G54 in our work offset page. Make sure our Y-axis is highlighted. And we're going to hit part 0 set. Make sure we use our arrow keys to get over underneath the Y-axis. Do our edge finder. We want to go farther away from machine home, so you want to subtract the 0.1. And now we also want to subtract from measuring our part the 1/8 inch. So we want to do minus 0.125. So there. So that sets our X and Y coordinates for the rough stock, and our XY0 is actually up in this corner inside of our stock. So when we machine around this, it's going to take material off here, 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 and there. So that's the 4 methods of finding your X and Y positions on your machine. All of our projects basically use one of those 4 methods. So if you ever do get stuck on how to do something, you should be able to revert back to the video.